As much as we like to ignore the financial side of art, the fact remains that movies are first and foremost a business. Even the most artistically genius film won't get made if studios don't believe people will watch it. And it's hard to blame them, it's just the nature of capitalism. They have to feed their families somehow. But it's still just so painful to see a movie's potential kneecapped in the name of satisfying the shareholders. Why do you think we have so many painfully average sequels, or creatively bankrupt live-action remakes? Artistry just doesn't come first. At least, in most places, it doesn't. In case you haven't already met, let me introduce you to Studio Ghibli, a Japanese film company responsible for such childhood classics as My Neighbor Totoro and Spirited Away. Ghibli isn't just a world where tiny people run wild and pigs rule the skies. It's a place where art and creativity conquers money every time. Ghibli doesn't just simply not care about making money, they almost have an active disdain for it, seeing money solely as the fuel that allows them to create their films. I should give some more context, because you probably don't believe me. See, something that sticks out about Ghibli in comparison to other studios is their fondness for movies with very small, very specific audiences. A studio like Illumination, for example, plays it very safe and makes movies that are almost guaranteed to draw in huge amounts of money. If a movie isn't based on an existing IP, like The Grinch or Mario, or a sequel to a massive hit like Despicable Me, then it probably has a very marketable premise, like a singing animal competition. And then all the way on the other side of the spectrum, Ghibli makes movies that are very much not for everyone, and often don't make their money back as a result. The Wind Rises may seem dull and slow if you're not an artist, and Only Yesterday is often deemed incomprehensible for anyone but adults who feel like life has passed them by. Do you know how rare that is? For a studio to greenlight a movie they know probably won't even break even financially, to unapologetically make complex, layered movies for adults in a medium that many will dismiss as just for kids? Studios so often try to appeal to as wide a crowd as possible, and as a result, the messages in their films lose some of their impact because they're less specific, or because the premise was very weak and uncreative in the first place. And don't get me wrong, Studio Ghibli does have some movies that are more typical, marketable movies that could have come out of Pixar, for example. Castle in the Sky and Kiki's Delivery Service are good examples. But even then, the complex themes present in each makes it feel like it was created because they wanted to tell that story, and not because they thought it would make them a lot of money. The story always comes first. And Ghibli has stuck to this, even when their movies have lost money. While Pixar keeps on pushing the panic button, aka another Toy Story or Cars sequel, whenever one of their movies underperforms slightly, Ghibli keeps on churning out creative masterpieces that most people just won't watch. Their most recent movie, The Boy and the Heron, is a deeply, deeply complex story about the film's creator, Hayao Miyazaki, reflecting on his own career. His target audience for the movie was himself, and the studio was willing to spend all their money to help him realize his vision. By some estimates, The Boy and the Heron was the most expensive movie to ever come out of Japan, and they didn't even market the movie at all before its initial release because they didn't want trailers, posters, and merch to sully the film's impact. They're just throwing money out the window at this point. And that decision to only release a poster before the film dropped didn't come from Miyazaki, but the co-founder of the company, Toshio Suzuki, a higher up. Toshio has always been against the company getting too big, as he believes it would cause the quality of their films to suffer. So, Ghibli tries to make their money almost exclusively at the box office, and not from alternate routes like DVDs and merchandising. That's already unheard of, but Ghibli took it even further, as they resolved to not make more than 10 billion yen, which is about 67 million US dollars, off of merchandising, so as not to sully the movies and their characters. The only comparison I can think of is how the creator of Calvin and Hobbes, Bill Watterson, refused to make any merch outside of the book so as not to dilute the magic. But he was just one man, and he was already very financially comfortable. Ghibli is an entire company that is actively working against their own interests. And since they're limiting their merch, Ghibli is always in a very precarious situation financially, since they're not making reliable money off of their older classics. It's not out of the realm of possibility that one bad flop could sink the entire company, and this kind of pressure supposedly leads to a greater focus on the quality of their movies. The attitude that Ghibli was founded on, and the one they've stuck to, is if this movie does well, then we'll get to make another one. If it flops and the company shuts down, then we've lost our creative spark, and it was fun while it lasted. They have actually shut down before, when Miyazaki retired for the first time and The Wind Rises lost a lot of money. And chances are, when he finally walks away for good, instead of hiring new creators to make new films, they'll voluntarily shut down again. And it's this willingness to let things end that really sticks out to me, because it's just the antithesis of regular business practices. Usually, if a property does well, it's milked for all it's got, as a studio will fight and claw to make as much money as possible. But Ghibli has flipped this idea on its head and has redefined what success looks like for a company. Their primary goal isn't to make as much money as possible, it's to make wonderful works of art and connect with their audiences, to fill them with as much wonder, heartbreak, and love as is possible in film. And that is basically why Studio Ghibli hates money. Thank you.